Hi, I'm Joe Starnes.
Hi, I'm Pete Lamb. We're going to have a discussion today about some of the stuff that's on our mind, and that could always be dangerous. When you get the two of us together, that might be a dangerous thing. There's been a lot of discussion and national debate about this fire research, the fire research that's been done and the fire science that's been just recently studied. You notice I'm not going to use the word new fire science because that's not what it is. It isn't new. But one of the things that's bothered me, Joe, and I know you and I have talked offline about this, is, if you follow this new fire research and if you embrace it and if you attempt it and if you try it, you're just nothing but a coward. And I got to tell you, I've been in the business a long time. You've been in the business a long time. I kind of resent being called a coward. What is the intent? You're doing work with the Project Kill the Flashover. What is the intent, your intent? You can't speak for anybody else, neither can I, but what is your intent with studying fire behavior in a new way?
Well, Chief, it's pretty simple. It's to prevent thermal injuries and fatalities in the process of fighting fire. And I have a selfish motive in the sense that my son is a captain in a large metro department, and any way that his old dad can influence that safety in a positive way, I'm going to do it. So that gets me up in the morning. So I stop the burning. Stop burning the gear. The gear's designed to protect us up to a little less than 500 degrees, and the time frame of how long that heat can soak and all the technical conversations that go with that vary with the heat flux and all the things that come with that. But basically, we start at 500 a lot of times in our firefight. We don't even go to 500. We start at 500. I see people walking through flames, walking with their head in the overpressure side in the chimney, if you will, of the flow, the exhaust coming out of the fire, and they act like that gear is impermeable to them and they're going to be safe. That's not true. That's just not true. All the research is saying to us is don't be stupid with heat. That's what it's saying. And now, if you go back to your own fire department and you look at what we allow, like Chief Brunacini says about leadership, he says it's not what we stand for, it's what we don't stand for. We need to stop allowing people to burn their Berkeleys off their helmet, melt their guard, for instructors to stay inside of buildings they like and watch their work. All this stuff needs to go away. We need to start hitting heat long before we get to heat. We don't need to get hot before we start cooling. We need to be cooling before we get hot. It's all about don't get burned. And we can do that. And by the way, there's nothing in the research that says if we do that in a smart, intelligent way, that we won't make things better for Mrs. Smith. It all is right there. So let's take the science to the local side. Let's take it home. Let's find out what to do at home with this stuff. And quit worrying about whether I'm following somebody else's process. Use the process to test yours, but don't follow what you do. Go learn what you do. Does that sound like I'm passionate, Chief?
Yeah, well, you know what? Your passion comes out, and it's one of the reasons we wanted to get together this morning is we're both passionate. I'm passionate about the training side of this house, and we'll talk about that a little later in how you do it. But my purpose for this video this morning, Joe, is really to kind of change the discussion. I want to bring some moderation to the discussion. And I think you just keyed on a point there. If I have 1 foot down from the ceiling, light gray smoke from a kitchen fire. The kitchen fire, the stove's got a little bit of extension in the cabinets, and the smoke is light gray coming out the front door a foot from the ceiling. Nobody's telling you to do a transitional attack there. Nobody's telling you. There's no heat in the doorway. There's no heat. You're not in a compromising position. Somehow, and I'm not sure how we got to this, I almost don't want to use the term, but it almost seems like the American Fire Service has a mob mentality. It almost seems like somebody has decided, well, you got to use a transitional attack every time, whether it's a pot on the stove or whether it's a smoking in a stuffed chair or whatever the incident is. No one that I've ever read has said any such thing. So I want to bring some moderation to the discussion, and that's why I brought you, because I think you really are a subject professional here. You've done more research than a lot of other people, and I'm not so sure everyone has done the research that you have or that others have. So, how did we get to this, I must do this on every fire?
One of the things you said, I think, is magic, is that you said, I read that. I think there are a lot of people talking who haven't read it. I really do. I think there's some people just, they want to be part of the conversation and they're parroting words. You know, if you're going to learn something, go learn it. But don't learn it on a YouTube video with me. Go do it. Go home, research it. Come back and tell your story. I think that's fine. And there's a lot of people who are telling the story about their experience. All that's fine. You should do that. But don't tell that experience story telling me that something else is wrong. We can get into all these debates about solid streams, a combination nozzle for solid streams, solid bores, all those things. The science of that is science. There are times when that science applied a certain way in a certain context works better than the other. If you take a hammer and try to use it as a chisel, it will have some flaws in it. If you use a chisel as a hammer, you're going to hurt your fingers. It is just that, it's that simple. So go do what you do local, talk about your experiences you do local, and then let the scientists be the scientists. That's what they are. And that's what they should be too. I'm all for it. I'm all for one context attorney. I'm not for taking the science and going back and saying, all right, we will always do transitional attack. We will always favorably influence the fire attack, whatever that is. And that means me being safe, my crew being safe, and Mrs. Smith having the best opportunity to get out of a situation that she is in that I didn't cause. I'm there to make it better for her. And I am one part of that piece that does that. So this thing about we need firefighting, excuse me, I said I wasn't going to use that term, didn't I? But the thing about being called a wuss, I will tell you that some of the things I'm hearing now about people using curtains, they're talking about hanging a curtain and all of a sudden everything going dark. Firefighters are afraid of the dark. They won't lift. There's this U.S. Fire Service is not yet comfortable with thermal imaging data in any way, shape, or form, being in the dark with thermal imaging data. You're safer at 400 degrees in the dark with a thermal imaging camera in a storage area of smoke than you are in a bidirectional flow at 300 degrees. Excuse my misnomer of numbers, because that bidirectional flow is going to turn into 11 or 1200 degrees in seconds. And so we just don't know. We got to quit worried about being righteous about one thing and being right about what we do.
Yeah, I agree. And, the thing that I'm also struggling with is as I kind of, stay quiet up until this moment, I've been fairly quiet on the national level about this. And that is, we can talk about our experiences. I must be the greatest fire chief in the world because every fire I've ever been to is out today. Eventually they all went out. So I must be really good. How do you weigh the balance, Joe, between arguing my personal experiences versus physics? Aren't we really arguing? We can discuss opinions. How do you argue with facts? How would you answer that?
My way of that is physics. Usually we talk about laws and theories. My experiences, we talk about my story. My story is not necessarily applied to all the laws in physics. I don't think we have the data. I look at what we look at on fireground data. We have very little data. We're probably one of the least organizations that comes back from doing our work with performance data. We know how long it took us to get there. We know when we came back. We know that it went out. But when it comes to anything else, we have very little data that says we were safe, we weren't safe. We're just telling stories. And we're using experiences and making them laws. They're not. They're experiences. And half the time, the context of that experience makes the story usable or not. If it's a ranch, I had 3 people. If it's a ranch structure with no basement, if I had 20 people in the first 19 minutes, or any number, pick anything. We're telling experiences. people are using, and with social media, we can, just like you and I are doing right now. We're ranting and raving about what we think that we ought to pay better, more attention to. If somebody listens to us, heaven help them. I hope they do. But we're telling stories, and when we figure out that most of our PowerPoint presentations are stories, they're not what NIST, UL, and KTF are doing. They're not a lot of data and a lot of correlation and a lot of hard resolve of a bunch of people analyzing what they see. This is one person telling how they feel. Be careful with telling their story. If we have a campfire and I tell a Cinderella story, would you believe me? So that's where we're at. We've got to get back to the fact. Read, study, make it local. Take it home. Put a curtain up, in your station, put a fan outside if they'll let you, and blow the air and see what happens. Look, try, see, test. Be creative about your own learning. Go figure it out as much as you can and quit taking sides and following the mob. If you're going to be a mob, lead one. Don't be one.
Right. That's good advice. Well, listen, let's leave some folks with some solutions. We presented a bunch of problems, and you're right. This is two people's opinion, right? This is our opinion, and I'm okay with that. But I'm trying to offer those opinions in a moderated format. I want to look at both sides of the argument and measure both sides of the argument. Let's talk about some solutions, and let's take it to whatever level you are in your department. So let me speak from a chief level. If you're a chief and you're looking at the data, you're looking at social media, you're going to the University of YouTube, you're looking at all the stuff that's out there. If you're a chief officer, here's what I think you ought to do. I think you ought to research as much as your personnel are, because you got some bright young people underneath you, men and women underneath you. They're learning this, and they're looking to you as a chief officer to make some decisions. If it is within your budgetary means, or if it isn't, you make it your budgetary means to get people the tools they need. Get them the best thermal imager you can buy them. Research it. Bring every vendor and march them into your station and let your troops test them. Get them the best stuff you need. If you don't know anything about curtains, get them in there. As Joe said, get a vendor in there. Get it. As a chief officer, I want you to encourage this debate within your organization. I want you to encourage the debate. I want you to don't you be the smartest guy in the room or smartest gal in the room. Give it to your people. See what they think, see what they understand. And this is, the fire service and change, we don't get along very well. Fire service and change don't go well. You're going to have some naysayers on your department. You're going to do whatever. But as the chief, we talk an awful lot about making the hard right decision. Let me tell you where I come from as a chief officer. The hard right decision is today. And maybe having your personnel angry with you because tactically at a fire you did some things different. Because that's a whole lot better decision than showing up at 2 a.m. with the chaplain and going to talk to somebody's wife, mother, father, whatever the situation is, because you were afraid to make the men angry, or you were afraid the men wouldn't like you because you were too safe. If you're a chief, stand up and make those hard right decisions. What about if you're a captain or just a company level member, Joe? What can you do if you're the company officer or even just a rank and file firefighter? What's your takeaway that you want to give the students?
The officer on the company, or the officer in a volunteer station with people who look up to you for that, especially strategic and tactical guidance, is study it with them. Just take it out and study it with them. Learn together. Go ask the pointed, hard question. Don't be afraid of the question. Ask the question. When we stop the flow path, what happens? Is what we believe right? Is it getting worse? How do we know? Does anybody have any research? Where have you looked? What have you done? What do we need to understand? What's the best hose load? I know we can't change it without approval, but listen, if we know more about why, we can make the case for approval. Teach your people. They should learn at the rate you're learning or faster. So if you're not learning, they're not learning much, and it's certainly not applying. So part of your day, it's got to be to add research to your learning. It's got to be to add the question to what you already do. If you're not questioning what you're doing, you're not getting better. So you need to use that research that's out there, that legitimate research. You need to listen to stories, but not treat stories as editorials. Don't treat them as data. Treat data as data. Go look at it. See how it applies. If it's more variables in the context of that training, then look at how it applies to it. Let's say we go with our company, we're second in. What's our responsibilities? How do we do what we are seeing? How do we manage the air? How do we keep from adding air to that fire? How do we put air to that fire when they want it? How do we use the thermal imager to detect heat? How do we keep from over focusing on the thermal image? I hear that all the time. It's the same skill we teach paramedics. It's not harder. It is just learning. And the fear of learning something new that we don't control how we learn it's driving people crazy. So you got to learn together. If you learn together, you will make faster change and you will be safer on the fire ground. So part of your day as a captain has got to be to lead and teach your organization how to learn what's out there and how to apply it. That's your responsibility. You better get on board, and you better get on board quick, or it'll run over you. That's my take.
All right. Well, listen, let's leave it there, Joe. I think that's enough. We'll see you folks again. I appreciate you taking some time to listen to our opinion, and we'll see you again.